The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it is Monday in the Riv. After an exciting weekend, we had something break on a local media outlet that could throw a monkey wrench into everything here. It's going to be very, very interesting. And for our sources, I was on my way to an appointment this morning. However, I did get a call that our mayor was on the radio again saying the people should weigh in on Diamond. And again, God, this is like we're running a streak here. We're agreeing with the mayor on again. Well, the citizens should speak because obviously the Constitution of this state says that they are at all times answerable to us. So if we don't vote, they're not answering to us. And, they work for us, even though it seems that some city councilors have forgotten that. But there's another big issue, right?
Oh, yes.
Fall River reporter. An individual called
M.R. Napert, N-A-P-E-R-T.
Napert basically is saying that the vote on the debt override, which is going to be implemented during this budget, may be null and void.
It may be illegal.
And I'm going to read it. I got it, CJ.
I've got it too.
Yep. Section 8.6 of our charter, who remember the mayor always says we have to go by the charter. It says, for any measure to be effective under the initiative procedure and for any measure to be declared null and void under a referendum procedure, at least 20% of the voters as of the most recent regular city election must vote at any election that includes on the ballot submission to the voters of one or more initiatives or referendum questions. So I think that's pretty clear, and I think if we remember correctly, the turnout for the debt override for Durfee was 16.9%, and
correct.
that came from the voter.
Yeah. Elections.
The elections committee.
Yep.
So we were under the criteria, and this section is called Article 8, Citizen Participation Mechanisms. So, and you know something? I hate to say I agree with anything on a charter. But, this is true. This is right. Think about this. It's saying that 1/5, which isn't a hell of a lot.
No, it's not.
20% of the people have to turn out before we can consider this a valid vote. I don't even agree with that to a degree. It should be at least 40%. But I agree with this because I do not believe that a small amount of people, remember, this is 20% of the registered voters, not 20% of the citizens in Fall River.
And we have about 55,000 registered voters in Fall River. Out of 95.
So there are 40,000 people who were not even considered when you look at this number. So,
right.
So the reality is that, so what happens in elections? You get all the political hacks and all their friends, and they all run to the polls, and they market toward their demographic. And so what we have is a small group of people. So this truly isn't a democracy. How about the people who are not citizens? Don't vote. They're legal, but they're not citizens.
Right.
So, maybe they're not on a voter roll. They're not on a voter rolls. And there are people who just don't register to vote, but they work every day. And I think that's not an unreasonable threshold. As a matter of fact, I think it's too low personally. But the reality is, what do we do now? I hope the city council checks into this, because I think that the debt override should be considered null and void, and that now we have to take it out of our budget, and now let's see what's going to happen. Well, you got to take Diamond and Durfee out of the budget. Let's see what happens to the city now, because these people never stop spending money, and you know something? They have to, because this city is going to get flushed down the toilet.
I agree. I want to read something that Mr. Napert wrote.
Okay,
and
please do.
I think it's interesting. Diamond Regional Vocational Technical High School, the current building having opened its doors in September of 1968, and which has facilitated the technical education of many thousands of well-trained artisans in its history, is in dire need of replacement. Not because the current building has been abused or neglected, like Durfee.
He said like Durfee?
Like Durfee.
I like that one, okay.
But a building that is seriously worn from 50-plus years of productive use. The current building is bursting at the seams due to the very nature of the great work that has placed it among the very best voc tech schools in the country. Many say we can't afford this, but the hard truth is we can't afford to not do this. Enter Mayor Coogan, a guy who can't say no to filling a $100,000 plus municipal position with a political ally, friend, or family member, as well as padding his own golden parachute. I love that.
Yeah, I'm really liking this guy, so.
I don't know who it is, but
he didn't mention the $19,000 pay raises people are getting.
No,
too.
he did not. He did not.
And therein lies the problem. Before you go on, therein lies the problem. If this city made even a minor attempt to control its spending and tighten its belt with these things on the horizon, you could maybe give them the benefit of the doubt, but you can't. So continue, CJ.
Well, I'm going to go up now in his letter. A brief history lesson. Approximately 6 years ago, I can recall a hastily cobbled press announcement made by our very own thief in charge, J.C. Second, along with a plethora of his closest department heads standing behind him, including school committee man P.E. Coogan, touting the necessity of the tax exclusion, aka override vote, to fund the desperately needed Durfee to replacement. This was not because it was obsolete or undersized like Diamond, but because of a criminally poor facilities management from its poor construction and maintenance, or lack thereof, paired with the ignorance of the resources required to care for such a facility. The result was the building being total trash in under 30 years. Fasten your seatbelt, folks, as we're likely to see it again in Durfee 3. The fact that the vote was succeeded despite it being fundamentally flawed. Only 16.6% of registered voters turn out, and a city charter requiring a minimum of 20% to pass. The override somehow passed, and here we are about to be saddled with that bill in the time of $115 tax levy per property owner beginning in tax year 2023. Now, again, we don't know. Is that 115 a year? Is that 115 a quarter? We don't know. We're not told.
Exactly. And what was relevant about this individual also brings in the other part of this puzzle. Look at, if we didn't get these deans of students, CFOs, chiefs of staff, $19,000 pay raises, where there are people who are making barely over $20,000 a year. You can't do this. I'm sorry. If we were in Newton, and I was looking up Newton the other day, I didn't look at.
You love Newton.
I love Newton. It's also the richest city in the state. But the reality is, I saw Newton, and it's not the U.S. Census Bureau which I use, but there are people who they were actually on one particular site. They said that the household income in Newton is now $207,000. Over $200,000. Now, to be fair, I'm not going to compare that with the 200,000 in the U.S. Census Bureau, because it's not the same. It's apples and oranges. But I will now look that up, because I was glancing at it this morning. I will now look it up and see what Fall River's household income is on that particular site. But over $200,000. And, you know, I'm sorry. $19,000, and it's not the only individual. There are other individuals that get the same pay raise, because many years ago we heard about a city garage. If you had a city garage, you'd only have one person in charge of the city garage. Now you have various garages to perform maintenance in different departments, and every one of those department heads has to get a pay raise.
Right.
Is that efficient? Is that in the best interest of the public? Or is that just another place to put your friends? As Mr. Napert said, they always find places to put their friends. We absolutely, positively have to have a CFO. In spite of the fact that since Fall River's inception, we never had a CFO. In spite of the fact that we have an auditing department, a treasurer with an entire department, a treasurer in the school department. We have all these people to figure out how our money is and how we spend it.
And where we can get more.
Well, we get a CFO. Throw it on. You hire a mall manager. You hire a mall manager, not a city administrator, to be a city administrator. She can't do the job, so what do? You get her a six-figured friend, a pal. And now that job lives forever now. Once it's created, it never goes away. We know that the chief of staff's position is a glorified secretary. That position was created by a mayor to justify a pay raise for his secretary. So it's like, okay, guys, I love the school department, loves to throw out money. And as Mr. Napert said, P.E. Coogan, he's not there anymore. But school committee, you guys hire a couple of your friends to be janitors, change the title to sanitary engineers, and give them all a $25,000 raise because they're engineers now. Because that's the way government works. The people have to put a stop to this. In the next election, you got to boot every one of these people who has no consideration for your pocketbook out of office. They do not care. Just like Stephen Colbert doesn't care about gas prices because he's got a $150,000 Tesla and he doesn't use gas. And he laughed at you. So they're laughing at you. They got $180,000, $200,000 a year jobs. They got incomes of $500,000 or so. They're sitting in the gallery nodding their head. Yeah, I don't care. Gas goes up $2. What do I care? I'm a state rep. I'll just give myself a bigger gas allotment. That's all. We'll give ourselves a pay raise. We don't care. And while we're on that, I got to get this in. I was watching an economic discussion about the inflation, and we know that the inflation rate has been tagged at 7.9%. Well, I saw an economist who said, well, there's only one problem with that 7.9%. This is government doing what government does best, changing the rules, changing the way we look at things. You can't pass the MCAS, get rid of them. We don't want them. Because we're not educating our children. We don't want anybody to know we're not educating our children. We'll say the MCAS are unfair, even though it is fair to see how they're doing. Well, this individual said there's only one problem. They said they're talking about the inflation rate being the highest since the 1980s. There's only one problem. The government changed the way you compute the inflation rate. They changed the way they compute the CPI, which that comes off. And he said, and it wasn't me, it was an economist, he said if they used the same criteria they used in the 80s, that they said was the highest, with a higher than now, today's inflation rate would be 15% under the old way of figuring inflation. 15%, double digits. So This is what the average person in Fall River who makes $25,000 per capita is up against, and it seems to be a total disregard. So to get back to Mr. Napert's letter, I think we have to question whether that debt exclusion was legal. And if it's not legal, they're going to have to stick it in the budget. And now that means they're going to stick that in the budget and find room in the budget, if they don't go to an override, for Diamond. So let's see what happens. This is going to be a very interesting period right now.
It's going to be very interesting. I'll tell you now. And, you know, the thing is that they're already scrambling to find in the fiscal 23 budget where they're going to fit this money in. They're forecasting. They're trying to say, well, this is where the budget is right now. What's it going to look like in 2 years when we have to pay Diamond? And they're scrambling around those numbers. And you have to admit, I mean, where are they going to come up with $6.9 or $6.5 million a year in the budget?
Well, I could save a few million. All we got to do is I can name about 20 positions off the top of, well, 29. We just hired 29 people that weren't on the payroll anymore. There's 29. Then we have a CFO. Then we have the dean of students. Then we have 6 assistant superintendents. You're paying a superintendent $200,000 a year to run a school department. Does he really need 6 assistants? If he does, maybe you should fire him and hire somebody else that only needs 1 assistant. And it's a system that is not performing.
Right.
It is not a meritocracy. The fact is, education throughout this country, public education, has been a dismal failure. I saw a report on that said that they're complaining about, they want to change the rules, give people diplomas that are reading at the, kindergarten level, first grade level, elementary school level. And what they do is they explain it away by saying, the tests are unfair. The tests aren't unfair. You should be able to read and write. I think it was staggering. I think they said that something like 60-some% of the high school graduates really do not have high school level ability in basically reading comprehension and skills.
All you have to do is ask that question here at PCC, and they'll tell you. They give all these placement exams to all these students coming out of the high schools, and they can't perform. They need remedial math, remedial English, remedial reading. I mean, it's a little ridiculous because those courses cost money, and they're not creditable, so you don't get them for anything. So you're just taking them because you have to have them, because without them you can't function in college.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, the MCATs, everybody complained, and they're teaching to the test. No, you're not. You shouldn't teach to the test. You should teach so people have the skill to pass a test.
That's right.
You don't teach to a test. That's a failure of the system. If you're going to just teach to a test, it means you're not teaching someone. If they have a math section and you teach math properly, if you're teaching it properly, they should be able to take a test on math and pass it. And they don't. But what is the thing? It's the typical wokey response. You suck at a sport, stop keeping score. You can't win. We eliminate scoring, non-result oriented. Now we got non-result oriented education. You can't teach the students. You won't teach the students. You're incapable of teaching the students. So what we do is we eliminate any kind of test that will evaluate their proficiency to see if it's up to par. So we eliminate it and we condemn the tests, not the system that produces people who are incapable of testing. Should you tweak an exam? Sure. I mean, they used to do that all the time in civil service exams. They would have an exam, and every exam would get tougher and tougher and tougher until they got such a high percentage rate of failure, they would then begin to tweak the exam a little bit, but they had to get a median. I mean, listen, We're seeing it all over the country. Education is failing. They're teaching all kinds of things that are totally unrelated to a person in real life. They're teaching gender identification, stuff like this. We're having all kinds of problems in schools. They're not teaching, the old adages of what they have to do. And public education is failing, and I can see in a not too distant future where public education is committing suicide. They refuse to face the problem, and what's going to happen is at some point in time you're going to see the government turn around and say, you don't want to send your kid to a failing school, we'll give you the money to send them to a charter school or to a private school, because we cannot allow our children to go to school for 12 years and come out fundamentally unprepared, absolutely unprepared. I mean, you might as well just yank them out of school at 16 and get them a job as a dishwasher. Because if you're going to send them to school, educate them. You notice that when you talk about vocational schools, they have a much better record. Why? Because you have to actually learn a trade. You have to demonstrate you can do that.
And you have to learn your academics.
Yeah, that's you have to learn your academics, and you have to pass both ends.
That's right.
That's why you see, and Mr. Napert's right, you see the attainment levels of Diamond, because in Diamond you're held to a standard, and if you can't cut it, they throw you out.
That's right.
And granted, public education can't throw people out, but the fact is the public education has an obligation to teach the people. And if you got someone who just refuses to learn, well, you have to get them out of school as soon as you can, because all they're doing is inhibiting the process. And, the total disregard for your money, because they keep telling you it's for the kids, it's for the kids, it's for the kids. No, it's for the contractors, it's for the politicians, it's for everybody but the kids. You know what's for the kids? Education. When you begin to educate the kids, that's what's for the kids, not building a building. And I believe Diamond needs a bigger and better school. I believe in vocational education. I believe in all education. But that's what I believe in, education. I don't believe in buildings. Abraham Lincoln educated himself in a one-room cabin. We have had people who have educated themselves, with no academic. There was some guy that was a mathematics pioneer who actually learned math from a book he found, never went to school, and he became one of the greatest mathematicians in the history of the world. So, listen, don't give me this crap. You can't do it. You don't have enough resources. No, you got too many damn bosses, too many chiefs, and not enough Indians, and the focus isn't on the children. It's about, you use every excuse. They'll learn better if they got a building. That's not true. The old Durfee was new at one time, and we've been failing ever since. Now we got the new Durfee. It's already on its way to becoming a disaster. Half the bathrooms aren't working. There's graffiti. We know that.
The roof's leaking.
The roof's leaking. But the thing is that all this is baloney. The way you measure the effectiveness of an education is how the children are educated. And the Fall River school system has been failing for a very long time.
Well, and, this new math that they're putting out there is ridiculous. I mean, when we went to school, we learned multiplications. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 3 is 6. We learned it by rote. We just learned it. You can't do that now. 2 times 20. You got to write out this whole math process, an 8-wing process. I learned the cheat way. 2 times 1 is 2, times 0 is 0, 20, there you go.
Yeah, but see, that's what happens when you try to make things so complicated that everybody can do it. And the old way worked, because mostly everybody
and that's how we learned. And we performed much better than the students are performing today.
Look, the old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it?
Yeah.
It wasn't broke.
Right.
People came out of the old schools and they were pretty competent at reading, writing, and arithmetic. And today, they're not proficient in any one of those three. We've seen what happened. We saw what happened in Baltimore. High school graduates reading at a kindergarten level, first grade level, second grade level, and that was a study, and it's appalling. And what was the response to that study? It's racist. It's racist. By a Harvard academic who said it's punitive to not let them graduate even though they're reading at a kindergarten level. No, it's punitive to release them into society with a high school diploma when they are functional illiterates.
Yeah, that's just like the kids that play sports, but they all get a participation medal.
That's
or
right.
A participation trophy. What was the sense of playing the sport?
Yeah, well,
it's competition. It teaches camaraderie. It teaches sportsmanship. It teaches, how to work together.
yeah, you're right. And let's look at the result of this. We're looking at a debt override that may not be legal. And if we have to take it out of the budget, we cannot function with that coming out of the budget and Diamond coming out of the budget. And who's going to suffer? The $25,000 per capita people.
Right.
The people who are renters. The people who have to work for a living. Do you believe the people who are sitting there with six-figure salaries and high six-figure salaries are going to care? When this city goes into receivership, who will suffer? The city employees. They'll get their pays cut, their contracts will go in the toilet. They're going to get hammered to the wall doing what this city should have done, because when a receiver comes in, he doesn't have any political alliances. They are going to eviscerate this city for not doing what our government should have done a long time ago, and that is control your damn spending. And you don't. You never have, and you're continuing to do this in the face of this. Paul Coogan is on the radio saying the people should speak, but he never stops giving out pay raises. Remember in the old days? Remember when Bob Correa got in and he said, nobody's getting a pay raise, I'm cutting everybody's salary 8%. That's the only way this city begins to recover while we rebuild it. And they booted him because they didn't like the way he combed his hair. But actually, he was the first mayor in a long time to actually look and say, look, we are way too fat in this city. But we got a mayor now that's complaining and tells us we should speak, but then he's going to tell you, make sure you speak, but I want you to give me the money to do this while I'm giving everybody huge pay raises. It does not, that is the absolute antithesis of the right way to do it. First, you have to tighten your belt, but government never does until you force it to. So people, fasten your seatbelts, because in the next election, we're going to be running some candidates who are going to pay attention to the people.
That will be refreshing. It'll be very refreshing to finally get people who listen to us and follow the Constitution. That is going to be the key. Follow the Constitution.
And the city ordinances.
And follow
all
city
of
ordinances.
them.
That's right.
Even the ones they don't like.
And remember, the charter must be adhered to. And remember, this year is the year that they appoint a new charter review committee. And one member from the original charter commissioners must be on that committee.
I'm voting for Danny Robillard.
I say Danny Robillard,
Danny
too.
Robillard, the only guy who filed a minority opinion and voted against the charter.
That's right. And he was right.
And bless Danny Robillard for being the only person who stood up for the people of Fall River.
Yep, he was right. And that's the sad part about it. Well, it looks like our time is up. I want to thank you all for watching. Remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. We'll see you on Wednesday. And happy Pi Day.